Good morning. I'll give a few moments for everyone to arrive. I'm getting back on schedule with trying to do a spiritual development Q&A with you every single day, on the weekdays at least. So that'll be a lot of fun for us to kind of reconnect and go deep into some topics together. Looking forward to doing more of that. I was in Ireland for a little while and busy, and now I'm back. So thanks for coming back and always listening in and being willing to connect with me, because today's topic is about connection. So I got really inspired this morning because on one of my close friends' social media site, and she's been someone who's always been really authentic with me. I love authentic connection and friendships. And she put a little meme, and the meme said something about, like, you'll notice that when you have a real connection and a friendship, that person is there for you, for nothing else but how they feel when they are sharing energy with you. How powerful is that? I'm really observing that in 2020 in such a spectacularly beautiful way, that people are connecting differently on this planet than I've ever observed. It's so exciting. I get really excited about this. Sadly enough, we're also I've been observing also people kind of leaving each other's lives when they aren't energetically aligned. And that's been hurtful for some people to go through. They say, oh, I've lost so many friends, or I've lost loved ones. Perhaps people have lost loved ones, due to passing. My mom and I were talking about this just yesterday. She's very gifted empath, and she said, I'm so upset. I've had a horrible week, Pamela. I've lost my uncle and 2 cousins and 2 friends. And then my best friend's mom died of COVID. And then my neighbor's, I think she said her neighbor's grandfather or someone died of COVID. And she was just really upset. And I was hard pressed to try to get her to understand that, it's a part of ascension. We can look at it however it is, but death is a part of life, and death is a part of this natural wheel of expansion that happens: birth, death, and everything in between, one not being more important than the other. Because she has to go through her natural grieving process and all of that. So people are observing losses in that way. When their friends move on and ascend, beyond the human form. And then people are observing losses in their friendships, or just differences in their friendships. With some friendships, you just are naturally evolving away from each other. And then new friendships, or perhaps friendships that were always there that you didn't recognize as much in the past, right? Those friendships are there, and you're finding new value in older friendships, whatever the case may be. So 2020 is ushering in new ways to love, new ways to be loved, new ways to experience what love is. And what that is, in the way that 2020 experiences, or rather teaches us to experience love, is about finding real, authentic connection in friendships and partnerships of all kinds. And the question that you might have right now is, how can we connect during this? With so many things we're told that we can't, and we can and can't do, so many places that we're told that we can and can't go. How can we not lose faith in love, in the love that we have in our friendships and partnerships, and the love that perhaps we're looking to manifest and don't have yet? How can we find love when we're told we can't even connect, right? How can we find valuable friendships that are authentic and energetically supportive, especially during times when there's so much loss and so much fear? So let's do a quick Q&A on this topic today. Here in a moment, we're going to start taking your questions, okay? And just talk about the way that we can authentically connect and find authentic value in friendships and relationships in 2020. Oh, guys, thank you for showing up yesterday. I wanted to take some time to thank you for the very powerful Q&A and your show for that, and all of your wonderful questions were so important that you asked people those questions, and that you asked yourself those questions. When we did the Q&A yesterday, and we brought in Edgar Casey to talk about updated remedies and to help healers, empaths, and channels in particular in their ascension symptoms and struggle to just not just survive, but really just to thrive more right now. We don't want to just be going along in 2020 saying, yeah, we're getting by, at least we paid the bills. I hear that so often. People will connect with me by saying, well, at least I still have my job, or, I lost my job, but, at least I've got, my checks coming in from disability or whatever it is. I got an insurance claim payment or something, at least that, right? I want to get you to connect beyond the at least, okay? So I brought some things, you guys know I love to draw when I teach, so hopefully you can read this. So there are 3 things that cause people to lose connection with themselves and their faith in relationships and their faith in their friendships. 3 things that cause lack of authentic connection from the heart. Those 3 things, can you see this, are loss of financial security, loss of your right to connect with each other personally, and loss of human rights. The human rights being fair and affordable healthcare, cultural rights to preserve your beliefs and your culture, and freedom of speech. That is the funnel that leads to banning freedom. Hopefully I won't get a YouTube ban for this. I got a little slap yesterday. So I'm getting more courageous to talk about harder things, and I know I'll probably get another little YouTube slap on the wrist from the community guidelines. So what we don't want is to think that we can lose our freedom, but I want to tell you that that's what I observe going on, these 3 things we're thinking that they're allegedly being taken from us, right? And that's what's making people lose connection to themselves, to their higher self, and to their inner child, to the heart-based connection, and in relationships with each other. People are starting to get more angsty than I've ever seen before on this planet. Okay, so let me tell you something that's actually positive. You can't lose your financial security. I'm going to repeat that. It is impossible if you really listen from your heart about where your talents are, how to tap into them. And when I say talents, I don't mean, trying to become a channel or trying to become a healer or trying to finish up a book. I don't mean those. Those are your tools that align to certain physical missions, but they aren't your true innate purposes. Life purpose is a feeling, not an action. When you connect to that, that is the truth of heart connection. Your mission, all those things that you want to do that you think are your purposes that will create financial security, people will pay for it, that will come. And it can come fast if you lose the belief of the how. So the how, that's something that everyone thinks about. They will say all the time to me, well, okay, you're telling me what my feeling-based purpose is, and now what my mission is, and now what my possible abilities will be to make that happen. Now I'm going to get creative. I'm getting excited. But how? How does that actually translate into financial security? I'm going to ask you today to stop worrying about it. Stop worrying about it. Okay? What that looks like is, okay, I have a feeling-based purpose. One of my purposes is compassion. It aligns with connection. I teach a lot about how to be compassionate and graceful in all circumstances. Now, how does that relate to connection? You have to learn to connect to yourselves, your higher self, your inner child, and your friends and family and others, right? And you have to see yourself in all things in compassion and love, no matter what, 0 exceptions. That is what I teach. Now, do I teach being completely boundaryless? No, unless you're living in a cave somewhere, you're a guru in a cave, on a mountain, or in an ashram, and you have no connection with the physical world that most of us here experience on a day-to-day basis that involve dishes and illness and taxes and difficult bosses and, children who don't want to go to school. That's my most recent confession about struggles. So that's the real world of what's going on in a third dimensional society that we live in, and we shine our light into that in order to make the shifts that are currently happening. These shifts that I'm so excited about finally seeing. Everybody else is walking around scared when they lose their jobs, and scared, when their class doesn't sell, or scared, when they're not getting as much sessions healers, things like that are happening. I, on the other hand, I'm like, oh my gosh, the collapse of a system that is no longer working. Yay! That's me. I'm on the sidelines of that going, okay, you don't want to pay me. Yay! Kind of. But in another sense, I'm also like, how can you begin to pay each other? Not just me, but each other. How can you start to share services that are actually useful and outside of these systems that are collapsing with each other? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that degree of connection, utilizing your talents and abilities and missions and life purposes and making money, or getting to the point where you don't even need it because you don't care? You're that deeply connected with each other that money isn't even, it's an afterthought. It may happen, it may not, and you're all still perfectly financially secure. Now you're going to have to get a new meaning of what financially secure may look like in order to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, financially secure doesn't necessarily always have to mean I got the boat and the fancy car and the this or the that, right? Financially secure may mean something completely different in the new society, where people don't care about those things anymore, or the moments when they do, it's not happening because of a system that is failing. Even the way that you're going to be voting is shifting. And no, I don't mean voting online. I mean something completely different. I mean actual options. I mean the collapse of a system that isn't working, a two-party system in particular. After this year, you may not see that anymore in the United States in particular. Don't be afraid. These are times of change that you've all been asking for. You've been asking for everything that's not 5D to collapse, and it's happening, and there's no reason to be afraid. You're still going to be financially and emotionally secure the moment you begin to understand what true connection is, and that's what I'm here to teach you today. So you cannot lose your financial security no matter what. My mom is a really good example of this. She'd go forth, and she's a real, oh my gosh, she's a whippersnapper. She worked at an insurance company for a long time, and doing claims and whatnot, and managing the whole office, and everyone just loved her, and they would do anything that she wanted them to do. And the insurance company made a ton of money because everyone loved to work for my mom, and she really respected them, and they would work very hard and get all sorts of sales because they loved to be around her, and they loved, like, her enthusiasm and her compassion and her authenticity was contagious. And my mom can sell sand to a person living in a tent in a desert. That's how gifted she is. Yeah. So eventually she got into doing other things that she loved, and it was a long journey for her to become the powerful music producer. And she now she produces me, which she loves on most days, until I got to get snarky with her. But on most days, she loves producing my music. And she went just having normal third dimensional jobs. And then she finally got the job that she really loved. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have to work with all these musicians that are cheating on each other, and then, like, not, taking drugs all the time and doing all these things. And, she learned so much in her missions, right? But she never felt financially insecure. When she lost her job at the insurance company, for standing up for an employee's truth, because that's how much she cared about her employees. And then the company started to go under years later because they were treating their employees unfairly. She lost that job, and she could have been afraid, but she was unwilling to be financially secure. The very next day, she had a job as a restaurant manager at a local fast food restaurant, working her tush off. And when that didn't work out because someone mistreated an employee and she called out the boss, it was pretty common for her. Later, she ended up starting her own business while simultaneously working. I think she installed installation at a construction company. And I don't mean this new type of installation. It was itchy installation. And she would come home when I was like 15, and 16. And she had that job while she was building her music company. She would come home all itchy and tired, but she refused to be financially insecure. So that's what healers are doing. You guys are becoming pet sitters and house sitters, and you're growing gardens and selling organic vegetables, and you're becoming nannies. And one of you sent me your pictures a couple weeks ago. You became a nanny to like 5 dogs. I thought it was the cutest thing ever, because I thought you were going to say you became a nanny to kids. While you're building your business, you're doing that. You refuse to be financially insecure. You begin to use your smarts and your talents to do everything that you can do. Another one of you wrote to me and said that you learned how to become a prepper, and then you started teaching classes on prepping. And oh my God, I looked at your classes and I'm like, oh my God, you make me think about ways to save money that I've never thought about. Now, of course, I felt like I was, sort of like also looking at that going, there's a difficult changes to implement, but you simultaneously were making people live more of a green lifestyle and leaving less of a carbon footprint on this planet while helping them save money. Freaking brilliant. And you love it. And you're making money because it is a product that people need. So you get passionate about it. And your passion is like, I call it God's yarn, passion, because when you have that, you begin to weave that yarn into the most beautiful, empowering, useful patterns. And of course, people will buy those quilts. Look at my friend Maria Hoschel, who can, exchange services or charge hundreds of dollars for putting energy, because she's a coder and she puts energy into a little quilt that she calls it the prayer shawl. And while she's like weaving these shawls from repurposed sweaters, she puts all these prayers and blessings of energy. And that's what she does. She codes her own blessings into these prayer shawls. When I've been literally having the worst health struggles of my life, my gosh, Maria's prayer shawl, I felt like it literally has saved my life many times, right? So it's about, when you look at things with financial security, it's about doing things that really cause you to connect with your passion and your feeling-based purposes, and that will sell. It will sell no matter what. Somebody link up Maria Hochel's? I will find it. If no one does it, if any of my moderators aren't here to find her email, I'll link it up before I leave this class if you want a shawl. But she is amazing. And she lives out in the middle of nowhere, and she's deep in her oneness, and she just sits there and talks to birds and water and trees all day. And she's writing a book. It's inspired by a lot of my work, so you guys will want to get that book. I'm sure she'll make it really affordable. But she's it'll be the best book. I'm telling you, she's like she's like the new J.K. Rowling, except possibly better, in my opinion. So that book's coming out, at some point when she finishes it, and it's all about, things involving the new society and deconditioning old beliefs and patterns that no longer work, except it's fantasy. It's fantasy, but it's not. I feel like she's picking up on actual galactic places and races and situations and cultures that are in existence somewhere. That's what I feel like anyway. So she is an example of someone being, and she's like, she doesn't make money. I think she's on disability or something, or maybe her husband is like, nobody makes money. They're not thinking about that. But she started the book writing, and she started making the prayer shawls, and now she is, because she's doing what she wants, and what she wants actually really helps people. What she creates is saving people's lives. So it's one of those things when you start thinking about, okay, I'm doing what I want. Now, how can what I want be translated into a product that can actually help people's lives? How can I use my heart to connect with someone? So that's what you do, and your financial security will never be lost. Trust that universal, infinite connection that makes you passionate, and then go with it. How you do that? You need to turn off the news. If social media, there are only a few reasons why you should be on social media. Number one, personal connection with your loved ones and friends. And then number two, connection in a way that involves creating your product and showing people your passion for whatever it is that you are, trying to put out into the universe. Healers, channels, prayer shawl weavers, artists, musicians. You need to be sharing that energy. Social media is a way to share that energy. When I first came out with one of my deepest passions, singing the sacred songs, I created Sacred Songs of the Heart. It didn't make me a ton of money. I just loved it so much that I'm like, here it is, $3, the whole album. I don't care. And every month I get a little bit of money coming in, but it was never really about the money. It was just about giving it to as many people as possible. And now eventually it's starting to reach people and make money. And I had no idea if it would or if it wouldn't. I just did what I love and wanted to share energy. So I use social media to share my creations of energy with you. And then money just happens to come. It just happens to come. The end. So when you're doing that, it will just happen to come. Financial security will just happen to be there when you create it from your passion and you wake up every day passionate about what you do. Okay? So your right to connect personally, you cannot have that taken. I don't care what mandates arise and are currently in your environment. You cannot lose your connection personally, no matter what. Thank you for the super chat, Serenity Chaser. Oh my gosh, I love that username, Serenity Chaser. So you cannot lose your right to connect to someone personally. Why? Because you are all one. And hello, the internet. When you miss your friends, WhatsApp them. When you miss your friends, if you're on Facebook, use your video and say hello. Pick up your phones. That's why they're there. We are finally using our phones in ways that are beneficial to connect with each other. That's one thing about 2020 that is incredible. Yeah, right? You cannot lose your human rights. Why? Because what you thought were rights to begin with, you begin to use to disempower and disconnect from others. And then you thought your government was telling you that you couldn't have your culture. No one can take you away from your culture. Fair and affordable healthcare. You cannot lose that. And here's why. Healthcare became a profiteering industry. In that case, no one in a profiteering industry, in the country of the United States at least, other countries might be exempt from what I'm about to say because they're not trying to be profiteers. But if you live in the United States, you only go to the doctor when you are sick and cannot remedy it yourself. So you can remedy it yourself in most cases if you are connecting to your body and connecting to the wellness of your mind so that the body does not become unwell. When you are doing that, you will not become physically sick, or if you do, you can learn to connect to your body deeper to find out how to remedy it without a hospital. So you cannot lose your rights to fair health care. Okay? It's just the way that it is. Profiteering in the hospitals, you don't get there unless all things fail. You just don't. Okay, you don't get there unless all things fail. In that case of illness. Now, in the case of planned surgeries, when you just absolutely need to, of course, you're choosing to take your body in your own hands. You're choosing to make a change to your body, not because you're dying, but you're just choosing it. That's a completely different scenario that you likely do not need, and you can do what you need to do with that. But understand that that does cost money. That has nothing to do with fair and affordable health care, right? So this is just something that I could go on and on about forever, but you also cannot lose your right to freely speak, at least when you are speaking with compassion and authenticity. So we're going to talk about that next, how to speak with compassion and authenticity, and how to speak with truth. Now, please don't make me go into the way that like Facebook and everything censors everything, because that's a completely other topic. You don't need to be using Facebook for those reasons to begin with. It does not work. It causes more division. It causes lack of authenticity and people to completely lose hope and shut down when you're talking about conspiracy theories and conspirituality is woven into every single thing possible. All it does is make you more afraid. It doesn't empower you to know that shit's going down in the government right now. You've been knowing that. You're intelligent beings. You've known that for years. And you know the laws of the universe. Where attention goes, energy flows. You want more child sex trafficking rings? Keep talking about it. You're going to get more. There are things going on that's causing that to go down. But you don't need to fight against something in order for it to go down. You need to support the cause instead. So find a cause to support. I'm not telling you to do nothing. Find a cause to support and go all gung-ho if you must. But don't just spatter out everything that you see from QAnon all over the internet just because you think it's providing awareness. You're not providing awareness. You're providing fear. Okay? I know I'm going to really offend some people in that, but you really need to be looking at your true reasons to follow things like conspirituality, particularly QAnon. I know it's popular and it makes you feel good and it makes you feel more empowered, but for what call and for what cause? Make sure that your cause and your intention is exactly where it needs to be if you're going to dig deeply into conspirituality, because you can mark my words on that. You're going to put more energy into it, more energy into it, more energy into it. And then you're going to be sitting with me going, why should I even be here on this planet? Look at all these things Q is saying. Oh my God, it's so bad. It's so horrible. It's so scary. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you're going to feel like crap. It just does nothing but make you, it just spirals you until you feel completely powerless. I found there's been only one prediction lately that's come true from him, and it's anything that could have been predicted anyway. We knew that those child sex trafficking rings were going to go down, and hallelujah, they are. They are, and we're seeing it all over the news finally. But some of these other things, like JFK is still alive and is about to come tell us, didn't come true. The days of darkness and the storm, prediction on the internet, that didn't come true. The president didn't come forth and say the storm is upon us, so now we don't have internet for 3 to 10 days. Didn't happen. Yeah, I'm going to call you on that, guys. It didn't happen. And you know what he says every time it doesn't happen? He says, oh, it's just not time yet. It'll happen. It's going to happen this time instead, and he'll give another date. Ridiculous. All it does is keep you chasing fear. Fear chasers is what that is. So that is one way to be inauthentic and to lose your connection with every reason that you're here on this planet, is when you listen to the news and conspirituality teachings. It's permeating spiritual teachings right now. Please turn it off. Please do not listen to that. Okay, so now for the good teachings. How to be authentic. What is authenticity? I've written you an entire chart of things that I've been studying about human nature for years. Authenticity is the nature of trusting valuable connection with others and self. Notice I said trusting vulnerable connection. That's a big word. Trusting vulnerable connection. How do you become vulnerable? So I get shamed all the time for being naive. And what is very interesting about me as a teacher is that I started out with ACIM and then A Way of Mastery and A Course of Love. Those are my 3 favorite teachings. They're oneness teachings. And any ACIMers here, I'm gonna share you a true story about vulnerability. There's something that is said in A Course in Miracles that in your, what is it? Jesus says it in there. In your vulnerability, ACIMers, help me out. I'm struggling this particular verse. In your vulnerability, your strength lies. Is that what it is? In your vulnerability, your strength lies. And it's very similar to a Bible verse about in your weakness, he is strong, right? But in this particular case, in ACIM, it's in your vulnerability, your safety. That's what it is. Safety. Thank you, Yeshua. In your vulnerability, your safety lies. So vulnerability does not mean weak. Your vulnerability is your greatest center of heart connection for authenticity. So the nature of trusting your vulnerable connection with others, that's what authenticity is. So let me share you my story with ACIM. I used to be terribly afraid of the future as an ACIMer, an ACIM student. I I guess I would do what you would call catastrophizing. Empaths are really good at catastrophizing. We will look at a situation that could potentially be bad, and we will look at it and be like, here's all the ways that it could be worse. Here is the flat out worst case scenario in your face right now. And as someone who was deeply immersed in shamanism and shadow work way back then, I would say, you know what? I'm doing that so that I can face my fears. I can face my beliefs. I can face the potentialities of all the nasty crap that could possibly happen so that I can stop feeling so cruddy, right? And that's what shadow workers tell themselves anyway. So, and they're like, oh, look at that. Follow that. When is the last time you felt that way? Pick that shit apart. When is the first time you felt that way? Pick that shit apart. Now recreate that memory. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, I feel like complete doo-doo, right? That's my teenager's word. He's like, Mom, instead of saying you feel like shit, say you feel like doo-doo. It's nicer. So I've been saying that lately. Whenever things are scary, I'm like, oh no, that feels shitty to feel that way. He's like, yeah, that's complete doo-doo. My 18-year-old, he's so funny. So as a catastrophizer, I would look at the nature of everything in all possible ways, thinking that vulnerability meant catastrophizing about all the worst things that could possibly happen in any given scenario. And it was just so hard to live that way as a shadow worker. So I was perpetually immersing myself in shadow work, and it felt like a constant integration process. So after 11 straight years of incessant shadow work and realizing I didn't feel any better, I sat down with a really powerful teacher of ACIM, and she said, why are you pretending to know what's going to happen? And of course, my ego had the perfect response. As a clairvoyant, I said, because I do know what's going to happen. And I know all the potential ways that it could happen. She was like, yeah, you do. If you're afraid of it, you're going to create one of those potentialities right now. How do you feel about that? And I'm like, well, are you telling me that I shouldn't use my gifts and that I can't see the future or shouldn't? She's like, well, if you're looking at the future, it's not here yet. Therefore, you're making yourself suffer. And I really had to think about that for a while. What did she mean by that? Particularly as a clairvoyant who does see the present and all potentials of the future. And she said, well, what if you didn't? How would you live your life? And I said, well, I suppose I just didn't know. And then I'd be scared that I didn't know. And she goes, you're more scared that you do know. and she just completely called me on it. And it was so true. I had to give up the thoughts of the future because it was making me completely catastrophize. So my way of being vulnerable is giving up predictions of the future and completely living in the now, but completely becoming defenseless and vulnerable and open. All right. And some people will say that's really, really naive because I never assume anyone's intention. I can never predict anyone's intention. Right? I stopped preparing for the worst. I stopped hoping for the best. I completely started living right now in complete contentment, gratitude, and peace for where I am in this situation, in this circumstance that God is showing me to bring me into my highest and best good. And for everyone who listens, to bring them into their highest and best good. And I had to become completely vulnerable with you in order to do that. So authenticity, what is it? I have an acronym. I love acronyms. Can you guys see this? Can everybody see it? Please say yes. You're good? You're good? You can see it? Yep. Okay. So A, you must allow. You must allow connection with others. What does that mean? You have to stop judging. If you're going to allow authentic connection, you have to start really connecting with people based upon your deeper instinct, not based upon what you think they can do for you, what you think you can do for them, healers. You're getting way in their business when you assume that someone needs your healing, particularly without asking them. It's kind of one of the worst feelings ever as an empath when someone comes up to me and they're like, I have a message from my spirit guide for you. Yeah, you know what I'm going to say, right? I feel some of you laughing right now. Doesn't it feel really bad? Because you know what's coming. You know they're going to be like, if you just would do this scalar energy work, you don't need to be blind. If you would just do this energy work, you don't need to have plantar fasciitis. If you just do this, you would be completely healed. It would be so, I just love you. And I'm saying this for my own best good because my guide told me. It's like, and I'm not going to assume that anyone has negative intention. I'm not going to assume anyone has positive intention, but I can't connect when people are giving me advice that is unasked for. What people don't know about me is that I came into this body with a unique contract to trust what God wants to do with it, no matter what. What does that mean? It means I do not give advice unless asked, and I do not receive advice ever, nor do I ask for it. I don't. I don't go to healers. I don't go to shamans. I don't have, I had some teachers in this lifetime, and I spent many, 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 many years in sacred reverence to those teachers and to myself. And now I'm done. And once I was done with that, God said, no more. You must learn to trust your own instincts. And what happens with your body is perfect. Your eyes are perfect. Your feet are perfect. Your blood is perfect. Your immune system is perfect. It's perfect. And I had to trust that. So when people come up to me and they're giving me advice, that blocks my allowance of connection with them, right? Right. So allowance, you must allow authentic connection. Okay. Allow it. Trust your deeper instincts. Don't judge where they're coming from or what they want to do, but trust your instincts. How? You must come to an understanding of their truth and yours. This doesn't mean you agree with them or that you have to agree with them in order to allow and connect. Okay? So allow the connection by understanding each other's truths. Okay. H and E stand for, and how do you do that? You must be in heart-based empathy at all times. You must be capable of putting yourself in someone's position. So before you get off on judging them and not allowing the connection and saying that it's your higher self telling you that that's the truth of what you should or shouldn't think about them and why you should or shouldn't allow connection, you must connect to your heart and empathize with them. How can you do that? By listening to them. Okay. There isn't an L in authenticity. Maybe we can just add it at the end and pretend. Okay. So how do you do that? You must be natural with them. What does that look like? Stop putting up a front. Be yourself. One thing that's really, really hard for me is when I'm trying to be friends with someone and they are very uncomfortable with who I am naturally as a human being. This is why I don't have a lot of friends. I have like 5. Truly, I can count the number on this hand. Trust. You must trust yourself. You can't trust them until you trust your instincts about the viability of the connection, about if it's good not just for you, but for them. You must trust. How do you trust? You must become deeply integrous with yourself and them. You must tell them when they say things that hurt you. You must also be willing to listen when you do things that hurt or judge another. You must be integrous. What does that mean? You have to stop gossiping. Gossip will get you nowhere. Gossip is basically sharing any information about another person without telling them in advance that you're going to and getting permission. So basically, unless you're completely building someone up and sharing encouraging, powerful things about another being, if you're talking about their life, it doesn't matter. The only way that you can talk about someone is in complete encouragement and positivity, sharing details about where their kids are going to school, etc. That's not necessarily negative, but it's just small talk that basically provides a shallow connection and no energy is involved in the small talk. That is why we call small talk gossip as well, because it is not energetically useful in an authentic connection with another human being. Finally, oh, and by the way, about integrity, you must not stand for gossip. When you're in a group of your friends and that friend says, I've just never trusted her, okay? You must be strong enough to not allow for it. If that means getting up and walking away, if that means changing the subject, if that means directly saying, I don't like talking about that person when they're not there, whatever it means to you, do it and do not listen to gossip. Do not stand for it. And finally, compassion is the key that holds authentic connection together completely. If you cannot be compassionate, you will have a very difficult time with connection right now in 2020. Okay, now I'm open to your questions and I have about 20 minutes to take questions. I know I just like threw a whole ton at you, so don't jump at it. Kendra says, don't be passive aggressive and say your guides or angels told you to tell someone versus taking ownership. Yeah, this is my opinion and I want to share it with you because I feel I know more than you. Yeah. I think that people are just not truly aware. They want to practice and exercise their spiritual connection and information that they're getting from their guides. So it's like a practice zone. So it's not always like some intention of them feeling that they know more, although it can be. Spiritual elitism is ripe and there for the picking in most New Age communities, unfortunately. However, there are many times that people are just starting out and they're like, I'm just sharing this with you because I love you. And I'm like, and I love you. And I'm asking you because you love me not to share information with me. People get really offended. I've lost so many friends this way. And I kind of had to stop just really caring in that capacity. I'm compassionate with the fact that they're hurt because I asked them not to share advice. But if they can't honor me enough to not share advice, I will not be their friends. Like I legitimately do not want it, do not need it. When you share advice that's not asked for from a person, you're actually disempowering and disconnecting them from their capacity to really connect to themselves. But in New Age teachings, it is taught that you should practice on other people. Well, I love you too much to practice on you. I just, I don't do that. So what I did when I was a little girl, instead of going up to tell people their advice, I would do that. And my mom would say, that's not the way. I'm like, well, what is the way? She's like, just observe them and then ask God. Observe them. Ask God if there's another way than giving them advice. Observe what your intention is for wanting to share with them something. Are you attached to a particular outcome in their lives and saying that it's because you care and because you love them? What are you really doing? Where is your integrity in this? So this is something my mom taught me when I was little. She said, no. Listen before you open your mouth and start giving people advice, right? Carolyn said, I'm so happy to hear you're not embracing shadow work. I've done enough work along those lines, and I currently prefer focusing my attention upon maintenance of the state of joy and peace. Yeah, and the shadow workers would say, you're bypassing. Do you guys hear that one? Yeah. So, you know what? Our psychological and physical systems are measuring devices that are not actually built or set up for the concept of bypassing. It is impossible. Your body will literally break you down if you're bypassing, and so will your mind. It is impossible to permanently bypass. You can temporarily bypass for reasons of personal defense mechanism. What that means is you don't need your trauma shoved in your face because it could mentally make you go insane. And you, if you're, just standard people in society, you likely have a partner. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you have a puppy you're taking care of. Maybe you have plans. Maybe you are a nurse at a facility and you want to keep it together so that you can serve others on this planet, so you can embrace your shadow self compassionately and a little bit at a time and lovingly. So it's not that shadow work in particular is wrong. It's very good, but you could do it in a way that isn't bypassing and that is loving. Okay. So I particularly love The Work by Byron Katie. It is a way to be honest with yourself without traumatizing yourself over and over again. So I'm not anti-shadow work, but I like to find a way to really balance the shadow and the light. There's a middle ground to every spiritual practice. And you can function better in a third dimensional practical society when you find your own middle ground that works for you, whatever that looks like for you, right? Robert asks, what is more important, connecting with your guides or connecting with your heart? What if you could lose the distinguishing factor between the two? What if connection involves not seeing them separate? Your guides are a part of your heart. They are your heart. You are them, they are you. New Age teaches otherwise. It teaches you to connect way outside of yourself in various ways. So I started out teaching New Age communities so many different techniques. I just threw them at you for spirit guide connection. Go back 3 years ago on my YouTube channel to all about spirit guides, and I've got at least 6 connection tools. And it really, for some of you, you were like, yeah, that's a good way. And for most of you, you were like, wow, okay, so I did that. Now what? Now what? Humans always have a now what to every spiritual practice. The now what is stop dividing and separating everything. That's the best way that you can connect with yourself and others, is to stop seeing other in everything. Guys, angels, Jesus, stop thinking ascended or not. Don't think embodied or disembodied, guide or angel. I don't care. Let's go deeper. Angel or demon. Are you scared? I'm not. I'm a hermetic alchemist. I've seen every single possible type of darkness from age 5 until now. And when it comes at me, I'm like, oh, yeah, really? Uh-huh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go deep. Hold on, I'm getting to your questions. Morgan says, I'm noticing friends, checking the time. I'm noticing friends not so much falling away, but getting triggered and lashing out as I share more of my authentic self. Oh, go deeper with me. Do you want to play? She said they were used to the cynical and sarcastic side of me. Oh, see, that's not what I thought you were going to say. Let me observe this. So they're getting triggered because you're being compassionate? Am I getting this right? Wow. I can't say that I don't relate. I'm trying to put myself and my thoughts and my feelings into that scenario right now, and I really do relate. I really do relate. I used to be really good at holding a space for someone's cynicism, for someone's gossip, for people giving me unsolicited advice, any possible negative scenario ever. And I would teach myself that it was compassion. Well, it wasn't. It was sacrificial martyrdom. So I stopped doing that, but I started doing it in a really loving way. Oh, and I have a process for it. I love this process. It changed my life. There are 5 steps to this. If you look up my blog, go to my website, or just Google my name and then Google Boundaries, the Final Frontier. There is a 5-step process for lovingly putting forth a boundary, right? Oh my goodness. That process changed my life, but because I wasn't agreeing with someone, even though I was doing it very lovingly and very compassionately, people would lash out at me. So I took it as there are 2 things that's true in this universe. If something is love, it's true. If not, it's a call for more love, and that's true too. So it meant that they wanted me to love them anyway, that they could be as angry as they wanted, and I would love them anyway. Not, I love you, but you need to stop being nasty. Not, I love you if you do this or do that. It was, I hear where you're coming from. Now, that's different from saying, thank you for sharing this nasty opinion. That's not authentic. So I rarely say thank you when someone's saying something that is harmful to me. But I can hold a space for it and say, I'm listening. I'm here. I love you. And I disagree. And I'm not going to change it. That was one of the things that caused so many disconnects. And I kind of looked at that for a moment and went deeply inside of myself and sat with Yeshua. And I went, okay, Yeshua, friends are dropping like flies. I feel like I am the devil that just walked to the Catholic Church and sat down for Mass. You know, I literally had to like, so what did I do wrong? And he said, oh no, you didn't do anything wrong. You're being right to you and you're being right to them. It's not loving. It's not compassionate to hold space when people are being unloving. You can hold space just long enough to say, okay, I love you and I'm not changing this. And I love our friendship. I love our friendship enough to not change this about me and to not receive your advice. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But if friends are dropping like that, it means more doors are opening for the perfect connection to come in. Not that those former connections were imperfect. They were perfect for what you needed to exert that boundary to love yourself more deeply in those times. So now what, right? This is a deep call for more love. It's so incredible. I'm so glad you asked that question, Morgan. You ask the most amazing questions, always. Jeez. Serenity Chaser. I just love that name. Every time I say it, it just rolls off my tongue. She says, I've been guilty of wanting to give unsolicited advice. Observe them. What outcome are you attached to? Thank you. Yeah. That was, I mean, it rolls off my tongue as teaching to you, but it doesn't, it wasn't easy for me. Please know that it wasn't easy for me. Oh, Lynn, you're so sweet. She says, when I feel like I owe you an apology. When you posted about channeling Eric, I expressed my feelings of loss and told you to try and ignore human ignorance. I think that you were just sharing something from your heart. Okay, so there's a difference between giving someone unsolicited advice. So unsolicited advice is basically something that you're saying for your own benefit because you want them to be different. So you got to kind of deeply observe, like authentically observe, like put your heart on the table and ask where you stand in that. And if a person has already exhibited that, say they don't want to do something and you ask them to do it anyway, yes, that's unsolicited advice. But just saying try to ignore human ignorance, that's not saying, oh, by the way, I should continue channeling Eric even though I don't want to, because you want me to. That's different. You expressed a feeling of pain and loss, that you were going to miss me, and you said try to ignore the human ignorance, which was actually really loving. That's different from saying, you know what, please do this because I'm going to miss you and because you should. Now that would be advice. So, and by the way, the main reason I stopped channeling Eric is because he personally loves to give me advice, and he and I will fight back and forth. And then he goes to his mom. I love his mom. She's amazing. But he's like, oh, Pamela won't listen to me. Will you please tell her? And I'm like, Eric, you're such a stinker. You already told me everything. And now you're going to tell my friend. She happens to be your mom. You're going to go bug her. He will bug the crap out of her. And she loves me. So she will come and be like, oh my God, he's bugging me, blah, 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 which puts a strain on our friendship, right? But it's okay. I don't channel Eric because he won't stop offering me advice. And I don't channel beings that offer me advice. He's brilliant. He saves missing children. He gives powerful advice to a lot of people, but I don't like it when he gives me advice. So I made that personal decision primarily based upon that. Yeah. So it was really, really hard decision. And I also needed the time to finish my book. There was some other factors at hand, but it was for no other reason. It wasn't because people were being nasty. I learned not to care about that. Just looking at your questions. Give me a minute. Oh. Oh, wow. I'm not sure what I think about that. Kendra says many teachers are teaching to see into different dimensions without being yoked to God, and it leaves your body being an empty vessel. I love the word yoga because it literally means to yoke, which to me reminds me of kind of an egg. But if you think about it, what is that? What is all of that? The shell and the yolk and the white, like everything's all connected together, right? And you're not, when you look at an egg, you're not thinking about what's inside of it. You're just like, oh, there's an egg, you know? Crack the egg and all the inner good stuff comes out, right? um, but also the egg is a container. Your body is a container that literally keeps you safe when you are unprepared to yoke your energy with that of different dimensional and normal parallel worlds, but different dimensional realms, so to speak. You are not accustomed to that, generally speaking, unless you're very practiced in both galactic history and knowing other races, knowing what they're about and why they connect with humans. It's really important to know. And just also, even when you tap into the Akash, have you authentically observed your reason for doing that? Or do you just want to be entertained? When you're just going into something because you're bored of being human and you're tired of the way you feel and you just want to be entertained, that is misuse of the Akash and tapping into that realm, right? So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I'm not sure I completely concur though, because I don't believe that the body can be a completely empty vessel. I believe that when you understand oneness, what you're doing when you are actually astral projecting is bringing forth an energy that is a part of you, but you're separating it temporarily in order to gain an otherworldly experience, if you believe in other. It's a very creative thing, but your body is there to protect you. That is why whenever you're lying in bed, I know that some of you are going to relate. So you're lying in bed and you kind of get the sleep paralysis situation and your body starts to shake, or you see something and then your brain doesn't quite know what to do with it. So you start to get the feeling of the essence sort of leaving the body. And what your body does is it goes, do I need to be afraid of that or not? The brain goes, I've never seen that before. I've never felt that before. Be afraid. This is what the brain does in astral travel, particularly before sleep or when you're waking from sleep. And the brain shoots chemicals into all throughout your systems. And it literally causes you to shake and move. And your brain goes, oh, whatever that energy is, why don't you just imagine that it's a big old demon sitting on your chest and pressing it right now? I'm just sharing like some of the many things that people have shared with me that they've seen that freak them out about astral projection. So they're like, and the brain goes, yep, turn that into an alien. Yep, that's a demon. It's furry and has long claws. You don't know what the brain is turning the scenario into, right? It could be strictly powerful, loving extraterrestrial being. It could be an angel. Most angels are extraterrestrial beings that just happen to be so different that humans have put them up on a big old giant pedestal and given them all sorts of weird power, but they don't want that power, right? So the brain does these things as a defense mechanism, and then you snap back in the body. Exactly, Morgan. You snap back in, or you feel like there's so much shaking that you literally push yourself off the bed. You do that because you are afraid of what you don't know. So it's almost literally impossible unless you're on the verge of mental insanity already. If you're in psychosis, that can happen. Possession can happen because of psychosis. But possession of what? Everything on earth is an aspect of you. And if it's not, it needs more love until you realize that it has been the whole time. Now, when people are really, really terrified of all the different types of beings, that can be a really difficult teaching. Hence why some people teach all sorts of pratyahara, that's energy management techniques, in order to stop being afraid. And the less afraid you become, the less you need this thing that you call protection, because you are a divine empowered being. Now, there's a lot to that. It's not just a simple teaching of, I don't need protection now. You have to think about where you are consciously and subconsciously on all realms of the brain. Are you a completely integrated being? Or are you walking around afraid, at least on some subconscious level? You know, Kendra says, I feel like spiritual practice without God is empty. What does spiritual practice without God look like, though? What does that look like for you? To me, I just can't imagine it. I don't even know what that looks like. I'm like, what? How can you even do anything without God? You are that. Thank you for that super chat tip. I don't remember astral travel. Am I blocking it out? Astral travel is not a necessary part of your human existence. It's not necessary to remember who you are and connect with your mission on this planet. You are here to be human. Astral travel is just, not going to say it's not useful. Some people use it to sort of figure out what's going on. They'll go talk to their angels or go figure out, how to leap into some other realm to figure out what's going on in their body. And yeah, you can get some amazing information, but then you got to come back into your body in order to utilize it. So you're going to get information that's otherworldly that generally you won't know what to do with. Occasionally you can get some practical tips, maybe if you talk with someone who's been human before, but most of the beings in the astral realms have not been human before. So what are they going to tell you about being human? You guys are going to get me off on a big old tangent. All right. I got to go so I can start work with you guys. But I love these moments of connection, and I just wanted to thank you for coming and sitting with me. And the way that we teach and learn from each other is amazing and loving. You guys always just really, really put a brilliant and loving start to my day. So I love you very much. And thank you for showing up yesterday for my Edgar Casey channeling. It was just kind of a mini class where we brought him in and started giving some updates on ascension symptoms for healers and empaths and channels, because you guys tend to particularly have more of a problem in 2020 than I've ever seen in any year on this planet and any year prior than this lifetime as well. So this is a particular hard year for healers and channels, and Edgar Casey came through yesterday. Just back up for yesterday's video if you want to see that. And if you want to sign up for the class and trance channeling of him, it will be on September the 27th. There's a 20% discount right now. That code is Early Bird Casey. That's the code to get 20% off. If you are a Patreon, however, if you're a part of the Patreon channel, you get 50% off, but you have to email me for that code because I'm keeping it super private and I change it all the time so that people don't give it away. Because that 50% off is for patrons. It's worth it though. It's worth joining just to get that. It really is. So that's going to be on September 27th. It will not be sold later on my website. It will just be sold in advance of the date, probably up until around, if it sells out, whenever it does. If not, until about 2 days before the channeling, you can utilize any of those discounts. But yeah, it's not going to be sold later. It will have a recording for people who register for it. And that recording will be given to you within normally about 3 to 7 days after the channeling is over. You will get the recording of it. Okay. And you'll be able to enjoy that. So I hope to see you then. It's going to be so powerful. Like I said to you guys in my Facebook students group, I was this major vitamin supporter, like completely like supplements, and they weren't absorbing into my system. Empaths have a particularly unique system in the gut where they do not absorb things. So I started learning that almost every problem with empaths, channels, healers, and light workers in particular are the problem has to do with absorbency. So I started talking to him about different ways to make our food more easily absorbed, which supplements are actually absorbent and which don't. And there weren't many. There just really weren't many. So I started thinking about elements and how to really break things down. And it has to do with heat or cold. It has to do with oils. It has to do with elements, the elements of the earth and the different elemental valuation systems. And for those of you who do use supplements, you might have to make some changes because not a lot of them are going to absorb into the gut for healers, empaths, and channels. I learned that more than 50% of empaths are iron deficient anemic, including myself. And I learned how to actually build the red blood cells and to absorb iron into the body. And I had to learn quickly, because I just got so sick of being sick. That's what happened as a channel. I got sick of being sick. So that's going to be an update for old remedies and sharing of some remedies that are already there. And the update is for empaths that are really struggling with illness right now. So healing your gut is going to be important, but it's different when it comes to Casey protocol. He's really, he gives me things that I can find just in my kitchen cabinet. It's like, we talked about it. There were a lot. You guys can go listen to some of the. Okay, he gave four updated remedies just in yesterday's podcast on YouTube, but it was incredible. If you're having trouble signing up for it, please just make sure to shoot me over an email, and either myself or my assistant can help you through it. But just click on the picture and then put in the date of the channeling and the time of the channeling, not your time, but the time zone of the channeling. That's all that you have to do. All right. So it's going to be on 1 p.m. on September the 27th. And then you'll be able to get through. A lot of people don't know how to get past that one part because it's different than when you're signing up for, say, a reading or something. It's a little different with the classes because it only gives you one date and time to sign up. And that is the date and time of the channeling. Put that and you shouldn't have too much of a problem. But if you do, just let me know. Okay. Patrons, don't forget to email me from your Patreon account, not in my email, because a lot of times your Patreon names are not in the email, and then I have to go do all this research to figure out who you are. So just message me from your Patreon account for your codes. Okay. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so exciting. I've been working with him for 3 years now, and I've just been building up these updated remedies for the entire 3 years. So I'm really curious what he has to say. A lot of you are asking about diabetes, anemia, fibromyalgia. What else have you been asking about? Pulmonary fibrosis, Epstein-Barr, MRSA. Someone asked about MRSA, and that was interesting. And the bacterial infections of the skin. Someone asked about cancer, but he made it really quick for me to tell you guys that he wasn't really going to do that could get too many of us in trouble because I'm not legally allowed to support claims for cures. Okay. Not a doctor, not qualified to treat or diagnose. And YouTube will go, oh, Pamela, no. Wish they did that just yesterday. I don't need another from them. All right, guys. I'll see you soon. I got to get out of here before I'm late. Love you.